All right, let's talk about your paralegal exam. You know how some questions are like dominoes? If you knock over the first one the wrong way, a whole bunch of others are going to fall with it. Well, today we're tackling that first domino in professional responsibility. Who is the client? Seriously, this is the one chapter you absolutely cannot afford to mess up. So let's dive in and get this right.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the big picture, then I'll show you exactly how to spot the key exam triggers. After that, we'll lock down the core rules you just have to know. We'll also get into those tricky exceptions the examiners love, point out the common traps so you can sidestep them, and finally, cover the bottom line outcomes. By the time we're done, you'll have a rock-solid framework for any question they throw at you on this.
So you might be wondering, why a whole explainer on just this one chapter? Well, it's because basically every single professional duty you have, I'm talking confidentiality, competence, loyalty, avoiding conflicts, all of it, every single one hinges on one simple question. Who is your client? Get that wrong, and there's just no way you can apply any of those other critical rules correctly. It's that fundamental.
Yeah, just think about it like these dominoes right here. Identifying the client, that's the very first piece. You might get an exam question that looks like it's all about, say, confidentiality. But if you get the who is the client part wrong from the get-go, you've pushed the wrong domino, and you are absolutely going to get the confidentiality part wrong too. The stakes on this one concept, they're just sky high.
Okay, so here's the thing about the exam. It's not going to come right out and ask, who is the client? That would be too easy, right? Instead, they're going to hide that question inside specific scenarios or fact patterns. The real key to crushing these questions is to train your brain to spot those patterns immediately. So let's go through the red flags you need to be looking for.
So when you're reading a question and you see any of these scenarios, I want a big red flag to pop up in your mind. If you see a meeting happening at a party, or maybe a client brings their cousin to the office, that's a trigger. You're asked to represent a whole company? Another trigger. Two friends want you to represent them on the same business deal? Yep, that's a trigger too. Each one of these should instantly make you think, okay, this is a who is the client question, and it's your cue to use the rules we're about to dive into.
All right, let's get into the real meat of it, the non-negotiables. These are the core rules and definitions that you just have to know cold. No shortcuts, no way around them. You've got to have these locked in.
First up, the prospective client. Who is this? It's basically anyone who seeks out your legal advice, even if they don't end up retaining you. You know, they come in for a quick 10-minute chat and then you never hear from them again. They're a prospective client. And here's the crucial part for your exam. You still owe them a duty of confidentiality. You also have to make sure you're not in a conflict of interest with them. And get this, that duty, it lasts forever.
Okay, now for the big one, the actual definition of a client. Part one is easy, right? Someone consults you, you agree to provide services, boom, they're a client. But part two, this is where it gets tricky. It's all about what the person reasonably concludes. So it doesn't matter if you decided in your head, nah, I'm not taking this case. If your actions made them think you were taking it, they could be considered your client. This is a huge, huge exam trap, and we will definitely circle back to it.
This next one is absolutely critical for any question that mentions a paralegal firm. And it's simple. A client of the firm is a client of everyone in the firm. So your partner's client? Guess what? They're your client too in the eyes of the rules. What does that mean for you? It means duties like confidentiality, and this is a big one, conflict checking apply to the whole office. You're not just in a silo with your own files. You're on the hook for the entire firm.
All right, let's talk about the joint retainer. What's that? It's any time you're hired to represent two or more people on the very same matter. So think like two partners starting a new business together, or maybe a couple buying their first house. The second you see a scenario like that on the exam, your brain should immediately go joint retainer, and you need to think about the very specific, very strict steps that have to happen next.
And here's that mandatory checklist. This is prime exam material, so listen up. First, you have to tell all of them clearly that you've been asked to act for the whole group. Second, you have to explain that because of this, no information can be kept secret between them. What one tells you, the others can know. Third, and this is a big warning, you have to tell them that if a serious fight or conflict breaks out between them down the line, you might have to withdraw and stop representing any of them. And only after you've done all that do you get separate written consent from every single client. You skip a step, that's a breach.
Okay, so we've got the basic rules down, but now let's get into the really interesting stuff. This is where the nuances are, the little exceptions and qualifications that examiners just love to test. This is what separates a passing answer from a top-tier answer.
Let's stick with joint retainers for a second because there are two really important qualifications here. First one, what if you have a prior relationship with one of the clients? Maybe you've represented them for years. Well, you've got an extra homework assignment. You must advise the other new clients to go get independent legal advice from another paralegal or lawyer before they sign on. Second, what happens if a fight breaks out between them? If a contentious issue arises, you have to hit the brakes. You must stop advising any of them on that specific point of disagreement. It's these kinds of details that will get you the marks on those really tough questions.
All right, let's switch gears a bit. I want to give you an insider's look at how these exam questions are actually designed to trip you up, because honestly, knowing the traps is half the battle.
Remember this quote, the one about what a person reasonably concludes? We're back to it because this is the heart of the accidental client trap. It happens when you're just not crystal clear and someone walks away thinking you're their paralegal. And what's wild is that what you intended doesn't really matter. It's all about their reasonable perception, which is based on what you said and did. It's a scary thought, right?
Okay, let's put this to the test with a classic exam-style scenario. Imagine your client, let's call him Bob, brings his cousin Mary to a meeting. She's just there for moral support. You look at Mary and say, "Hey Mary, just to be clear, I only represent Bob here. So my question to you is that enough? Have you done enough to avoid any confusion?" Take a second and really think about it.
If you thought yes, that's exactly the trap the exam wants you to fall into. The real answer is no. Just saying it isn't quite enough. The exam isn't testing for the bare minimum, it's testing for the best practice. And the best practice is way more thorough. It means you should have met with your client, Bob, privately first. Then, you clearly tell Mary she's not your client. And the gold standard? You confirm all of this in writing. That's the level you need to be thinking.
Here's another classic mix-up representing a company. It seems simple, but it's not. The question is, who is the actual client? It's not the CEO who hired you. It's not the manager who gives you instructions. The client is the organization itself, the legal entity. The CEO is just the authorized agent who gives you your instructions. Why does this matter? Because your ultimate duty of loyalty is to the company, not the person who signs the checks. The exam loves to create scenarios where the CEO wants you to do something that's good for them, but bad for the company. And you have to know your duty is always, always to the company.
So, what happens when things go wrong, when these rules get broken? This is a super important part because a lot of exam questions won't just ask you to spot the mistake. They'll ask you what happens next. They'll ask for the correct outcome.
So if you fail to be clear and you end up with one of those unintended clients we talked about, the consequences are, well, they're severe. All of a sudden you owe this person full professional duties, confidentiality, loyalty, the whole shebang. And this means you could actually be disciplined by the Law Society for breaching your duties to a client that you didn't even know you had. It's a nightmare scenario.
And what about when a joint retainer goes south? Let's say a big, unfixable conflict blows up between your clients. What's the outcome? The default rule is that you have to withdraw. And not just from one client, you have to withdraw from representing all of them. You can't play favorites, you can't pick a side, you're out. And you should burn that into your memory, because withdraw from all parties is a very, very common correct answer on the exam.
Okay, as we get ready to wrap this up, let's tie it all together with one final big picture question. If you were to boil this whole chapter down to one single piece of advice, what's the most important thing you can do to prevent all these headaches? The accidental clients, the mix-ups with friends and family, the joint retainer blow-ups, what's the key?
The answer is actually really simple, but it's incredibly powerful. Document everything, in writing, always. I'm talking about a crystal clear retainer agreement that names your client, a non-engagement letter that specifically says you are not acting for someone, getting your instructions confirmed in an email. This written record is your ultimate shield. It cuts through all the ambiguity, and it's the #1 way to protect yourself and make sure you're serving your actual client properly. And that is the key takeaway I want you to carry into your exam.